What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so I've been thinking recently about Loki in Avengers 4, and I have been thinking that Loki is alive, and I think I know what Loki's doing. So all this really comes down to a theory that was confirmed by the heads of the MCU, that Loki was under the control of the Mind Stone, right? Like that was a theory that had been circulating around for a long time because people had been looking at the transition of Loki. Nothing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe ever really happens without an intention when it comes to like character development. I mean, there are plot holes. There's plot holes in every movie series, every movie franchise ever. I mean, like Harry Potter's a really good example. Hey guys, we have a time turner. Well, let's just go back in time and stop Voldemort from like when he rose to power. Let's just kill him, and then we won't have to worry about it or anything. Let's just like kill him when he's Tom Riddle. Well, no, that makes too much sense because then, we can't write 7 books. So I mean, there's plot holes, in all kinds of different stuff. But nonetheless, when it comes to Loki, really like the idea that he'd been under the control of the Mind Stone since Avengers fits well, and it actually fits into this theory. And the reason why is because when this theory was confirmed, what it did is it said, okay, so like Loki basically pops up in Avengers and becomes a bad guy. Like we'd seen him before Avengers, right? Like we seen him in Thor. But like when he was in the Thor film, he wasn't like a straight up villain like he was in the movie Avengers. I mean, he was kind of a bad guy, but he was a bad guy more so, insofar as like, hey, I'm trying to like seize control of the throne or whatever. But when you get to Avengers, he's just like, everyone needs to die. Like, I hate everybody and everything. He's like every 15-year-old emo kid ever, right? He's like, everybody needs to die, and like, I hate everything, and I'm so misunderstood by the world and all that kind of stuff. And so you look at that, and then you look at like his subsequent appearances, and he becomes less and less villainous as his subsequent appearances go on. Now, the idea behind this initially was that, well, it's just the character development of Loki. But when the fan theory came out and Marvel confirmed it, that Loki was controlled by the Mind Stone, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. So like in Avengers, he was controlled by the Mind Stone. It just fueled his hatred for his brother and for Earth. And that's why he was just such a dick, So it's like, okay, that makes sense. So then once he becomes his real self, he becomes a lot more toned down, and he becomes really more of like an anti-hero, if not like a straight up hero, as like the movies begin to progress, the movies begin to go on. But here's the funny thing about this. So with that having been said, in Marvel Comics, while Doctor Strange is the Sorcerer Supreme, right? Like he's the guy that's supposed to know the most about magic, although that kind of changes based on the story. The person that I would say knows the most about dimensions and like the various little pocket realities and so on and so forth that are out there outside of Doctor Strange is Loki. And the reason why is because Doctor Strange and Loki are the two most traveled beings out there when it comes to sorcery, right? Like you've got the Scarlet Witch who uses her powers of sorcery, but she doesn't really jump from one dimension to the next. Brother Voodoo did kind of a little bit, but not on the same level as like Doctor Strange. And so like when it comes to Doctor Strange and Loki, their journeys into like alternate realities and to like other dimensions and things like that is hitherto unrivaled. And so we could easily take that and transition it over to like Loki as a character. Because here's the issue. All we really know about Loki is that like he's the adopted son of Odin. Of course, he's basically like a frost giant, more or less. And that he was kind of a dick when he was younger and a little bit of a mischief maker. But we don't really know like everything Loki was doing between the time that he was like a little kid and the time that he grew up to be an adult. And even then, like during the time when he was in adulthood, which however many thousands of years that went on for, we don't really know exactly what all was going on. And it could just be that because of the fact that Thor was like the prize son of Odin, and that Odin was kind of like, Loki, do your thing as long as you don't create problems, that traveling outside of Asgard and going to like other dimensions, right? Going to like the other realms, so like Jotunheim and all that kind of stuff. To kind of explain that for a second, for those of you guys who don't know, because a lot of people find this really, really confusing. So in Marvel Comics, what you have is you have what are called pocket dimensions, right? I'm going to talk about this for a second. It kind of comes out of nowhere, but bear with me. You have what are called pocket dimensions, right? Like pocket dimensions are basically like smaller universes, right? So you have like the Marvel Cinematic Universe in its entirety. And then inside of that universe, you have a smaller universe, which is called Asgard. And then you have another smaller universe, which is called like Jotunheim. And then you have like another smaller universe called Hell, which is the realm of Hela, and so on and so forth. They are individual realities. So the only way to really access those is to literally use the Bifrost. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a bridge that literally bridges from one universe to the next. And so all the Bifrost really does is essentially open a wormhole from like one universe to another universe, and that's how they travel from realm to realm. You can't leave Earth. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you can't leave Earth, travel far enough, and reach Asgard. You have to kind of break through a dimensional barrier, travel into the pocket universe of Asgard, and then that's when you'll find the actual kingdom of Asgard. The same thing with like Jotunheim and all that kind of good stuff. So that's why you never see the Guardians of the Galaxy like travel, like say, okay guys, we're going on a mission, and then just hit like hyperspeed and then travel to Jotunheim. It doesn't really work that way. Nonetheless, that's kind of how that little tidbit remains. For those of you guys who are curious about that. But nonetheless, when it comes to Loki, here's what I think's been going on. So in reality, if you look at Loki for what he is exceedingly exceedingly smart, right? He's not like a genius, he's not like Reed Richards intelligent, but he's very, very smart in terms of like mysticism and just having been alive for like a really long time. Like when he sits down and he says, okay, so like basically I was under the control of the Mind Stone by Thanos, right? Like somewhere along the line, he had to have realized that. Like he had to have come to grips with that fact and understood that's what was going on. And then in turn, Loki would have to sit down and realize, okay, any artifact out there in the universe that's powerful enough to basically like take over the mind of gods has to be exceedingly powerful. Now from there, you can assume Loki went on kind of a journey of sorts and was like, okay, what are the Infinity Stones? What can they do? So on and so forth, you know, what are they capable of? Because I have a hard time believing Loki would have gone into the events of like Infinity War having no idea what the Infinity Gauntlet was or what it was capable of or anything like that. Like Odin knew what the Infinity Stones were. Like he knew how powerful they were, and he knew that if they were brought together, that they would basically create like an unstoppable force, you know, in terms of the person who's wielding it. And so Loki in and of himself could have just gone to investigate that. Now, having said that, if Loki came to that realization, then he would have to sit down and say, okay, then we can't stop them on our own. Like there's no conceivable way to do that. Earth superheroes cannot stop Thanos. It's impossible because he's just that strong. Like even their Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, which the last indication that there's no indication that Loki really knows about Doctor Strange, or at least he has any information about how powerful Doctor Strange is by the time we get to the events of Infinity War, because Loki was presumably dead by then. And so even if that was the case though, Loki would have to look back and say, okay, but even Doctor Strange wouldn't be powerful enough to stop Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. Loki would go on this mission and say, we need to find those who are. And it would make sense that Loki would in turn track down the cosmic entities. And here's the reason why, is because in Marvel Comics, it was Adam Warlock who pulled that off, right? Like it was Adam Warlock who basically said, okay, so like we're gonna have two battles here. One battle is basically gonna be a sham, and the other battle is gonna be the actual war. So like when the Infinity Gauntlet event popped off, Thanos got the Infinity Stones, Adam Warlock was woken up, and then him and Gamora and Pip the Troll went to go gather what was left of the Earth superheroes. What Adam Warlock didn't tell them is that they were basically gonna be cannon fodder. So like Cyclops, Wolverine, Name of the Submariner, Nova, Eric Masterson, Thor, they were all basically gonna be cannon fodder. There's nothing they could do to stop Thanos. But the idea behind that was to, at the very least, like test Thanos and see what he could do. And then from there, grab the cosmic entities and bring them in. And then use the cosmic entities as a way to try to defeat Thanos. I mean, all of it really kind of came down to the Silver Surfer, right? Like the idea was to throw all those guys in there, all the Earthbound heroes in there, and say, all of you fight Thanos, you're all gonna be a distraction. In a moment of hubris, Thanos is gonna let his guard down, Silver Surfer's gonna race off, he's gonna try to grab the gauntlet, and then of course Silver Surfer failed. So then Adam Warlock called in the cosmic entities, none of which stood a chance. They were all basically defeated. They fell before the power of the gauntlet. Now, how the cosmic entities will fare against Thanos in the MCU is anybody's guess, because a lot of things are depowered. Like a lot of things are not really depowered. They're far less powerful in the movies than they are in the comics. Now, a lot of that's done just for the sake of believability. If we actually had Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet from Marvel Comics in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the totality of its power, doing all the things he did in the Infinity Gauntlet comic, then people would just be like, well, this is hopeless. Like no one's going to be able to stop him. Although I think it would be cooler. I think it would be cool if the movie ended the same way the comic did, and that Thanos basically falls prey to his own arrogance. But nonetheless, it is cool in this little tidbit, because with Loki being out there, like let's assume, for example, that he did fake his own death, that he cast a giant illusion, because at the time, Thanos did not have the Reality Stone. So Thanos would not be able to differentiate between the illusion Loki cast and reality itself. And if Loki is knowledgeable about the Infinity Stones, and Loki knows that Thanos doesn't have the Reality Stone, then he could cast an illusion of his own death, make Thanos believe he died, and then in turn, like disappear, just like vanish into the sunset and go track down the cosmic entities. And in tracking down the cosmic entities, we know they're the ones who created the Infinity Stones, right? Like we know that from Guardians of the Galaxy. We know that from the Guardians of the Galaxy handbook that was released alongside the Blu-ray, I think it was. Like Marvel's released information telling us where the Infinity Stones came from. So like we know the cosmic entities were the ones who made them. So if the cosmic entities were the ones who made them, then the cosmic entities are the ones who could depower them. So literally Loki goes and grabs the cosmic entities, brings them back, probably at the end or something like that, and the cosmic entities are just like done. And it would basically be the Marvel Cinematic Universe equivalent of like Infinity War Part 1, right? Like from the comics, when like Adam Warlock had the Infinity Gauntlet, started going crazy and you know, thought he could show off to the Living Tribunal, and the Living Tribunal just shut down the Infinity Gauntlet. It was just like, your power's nullified now. That's it. The Infinity Gauntlet will not work until this trial is done. It was a crazy display of power. Even Adam Warlock was just kind of like, what? But again, like Loki could take the place of Adam, because with everything that's gone on with James Gunn, as far as we're aware, like Adam Warlock is done and gone now. Like he's never gonna appear in the MCU unless somebody else decides to bring him back, or they're not gonna use James Gunn's script for Guardians 3, as far as I'm aware. I think it's kind of up in the air. I think we're hearing news from both sides, like yes, they're gonna use it, no, they're not. I don't think it's really been confirmed. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't really looked into that. But nonetheless, it makes sense that Loki would pull that off. If you're Doctor Strange and you're sitting down and you're saying, okay, here's all the pieces on the board, like Loki is the one thing that Thanos is not expecting, right? Like it's the one thing Thanos doesn't count on, because as far as Thanos is concerned, Loki's dead. And so it would come out of nowhere if suddenly Loki reappeared with the cosmic entities, because it would throw Thanos off guard, because he wouldn't see it coming, because it's the one thing he didn't expect. And that of course is assuming Thanos doesn't understand the origin of the Infinity Stones, which there's reason to believe he doesn't. doesn't know where they came from because he's never offered an explanation on where they came from. All he knows is that they exist and he tracked them down and captured him. But if he doesn't know the full story behind them and Loki does, then that's Loki's trump card. And that's the plan that Doctor Strange was counting on. It's the idea that Doctor Strange's like, okay, so with everything that's happened so far, everything transpiring the way that it does, Loki has to go round up the cosmic entities and bring them in. And that's going to be like, literally, it's going to bring an end to everything. But I don't know. I mean, at this point, again, like, it's a crapshoot. I mean, Marvel is so hush hush about like what's going on with Avengers 4. Like, all the trailers have just said like, this is a movie that's happening and it comes out in April. See you then. That's basically it. We have like no real spoilers for what's going on, which is really, really cool to see that they're playing it so close to the vest, because I hate having trailers that just blow everything. But nonetheless, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. I'm curious what your theory is. If you guys are new here to Comics Explain, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.